Greetings and welcome to Heli Market Trends Live, hosted by Aero Asset. I'm Emmanuel Dupuy, and today's roundtable focuses on helicopter emergency medical services, a vital industry now embedded in healthcare systems worldwide. Helicopter EMS is at the intersection of aviation, medicine, and public service. Around the world, programs are adapting to new technologies, shifting funding models, and changing healthcare needs. We'll explore this evolving ecosystem in two different panels. Gideon Ewers, editor of RotorHub International, will moderate a European panel of industry stakeholders. John Byus, senior sales director at Aero Asset, will then give us the North American perspective. Last but not least, we will wrap up with a look at what pre-owned twin-engine helicopter markets have been doing in the last 6 months. But first, to get us going and explore the European HEMS perspective, I'm delighted to introduce Gideon Ewers, editor of RotorHub International. Gideon, great to see you.
Emmanuel, good to see you, and thank you for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I am but a humble scribe and scribbler in the vertical lift space, but fortunately for you and me, I'm joined by a panel of distinguished guests. They are Matthias Ruppert. Dr. Matthias Ruppert, I should say, is the Chief Medical Officer with ADAC. ADAC, as many of you will already know, is one of certainly the largest HEMS operators in Germany, if not in Europe as a whole. Also joining me is Martin Stucki. Martin, of course, was the founder of Marenco, developer of the copter, now the AW09. These days, Martin is working on a new project, a hybrid electric helicopter, which I think is kind of exciting and probably very much more exciting than some of the more high-profile developments in the electric aviation space. And finally, Thibault Nicodeme. Thibault is the CEO of SAF Aerogroup. They're involved in right across the spectrum from operations, training, as well as MRO provision. What's the bottom line? They have 70 mission aircraft joined by 31 training aircraft, and they're distributed across 31 bases in the world. So you can see that these fellows know rather more about, they've forgotten more about it than I will ever know. Gentlemen, thanks for being here today. I guess the first place to start is with the question, what do we think the purpose of HEMS in the wider ecosystem of healthcare is? If I could just open that, Matthias, just share with me your vision thing.
Well, yeah, first of all, hello from my side, and a great pleasure to be with you to discuss a little bit the world around about HEMS. And well, from the starting point, of course, we see a time where, well, medical evidence is growing and changing, and where healthcare systems are in the process of more concentrating, obviously, their resources. And what that basically means from our perspective is that, one, we have more and more patients who have to go to designated centers over longer distances. And second, that we have learned that time is critical, obviously, but even more maybe that time is critical to definite care. So not so much the time until we arrive on scene is the most crucial interval, but more the time to definite care. And for that reason, again, we think quite a bit about what do we do in HEMS to follow these demands and requirements. And we do have a discussion about should we more transfer parts of treatment from the scene into the helicopter and doing more things en route, for example. And so I think HEMS always has to follow the changes in the healthcare systems in the specific region. And second, of course, following what medical evidence is delivering. And of course, that is a continuous progress, but especially in the last years, healthcare systems are in a real process of change.
Sure. And And Thibault, as an operator, your operations are widespread. You know, it's you do. Can you offer some perspective, having that experience of operating in, you know, not only in Europe but around the world? You know, the dimensions there. What would you like to add?
Yeah, I can only join Matthias in the comment that indeed the HMS operations are following, you know, the evolution of the healthcare system. And maybe one example that I can quote is, you know, probably 20 years ago, you can guess I was not there at that time, but HEMS operations were mainly focused around primary rescue operations. And what we can see today, and here I can really testify, is that we see a significant growth of secondary missions in our HEMS operations, meaning, you know, transfers of a patient from a medical office to an hospital, or from one hospital to another hospital. And here, what is very interesting is that the HEMS operations and the HEMS operators are providing a solution to the doctors in terms of their difficulties with recruitment, in terms of their difficulties with staffing an hospital with proper specialists. As an example, this summer we have been operating an helicopter for, I would say, a small hospital in rural France, in the countryside. And this hospital was in front of a difficult choice to close their emergency service during the summer because of doctors' vacation. And the helicopter allowed them to keep the emergency service open because they could rely on the helicopter as an option, you know, to send any specific case to a main hospital, maybe 45 minutes flight from their base. And here it's typically, you know, the recruitment issues that hospitals face, and the HEMS is coming. The HEMS operations are coming as a facilitator to solve their issues, their HR issues.
Matthias, you look like you wanted to add something, and Martin, I'll come to you shortly.
That's we already start into quite an exciting discussion, because I definitely can follow that. On the one hand, we have this tendency to secondary emission. On the other hand, we also see countries and regions where we see the other way around, you know, where the healthcare system managed to bypass the patients from the smaller hospitals, you know, because most of our secondary emissions say that the patient was in the first instance in the wrong hospital. Yeah. And the more sophisticated dispatch and ground-based services are, the more you have an increase of primary or post-primary missions to avoid the patient being first delivered to the basically wrong hospital. Yeah. So depending on the system around us, it can go the one or the other way.
Sure. Martin, I know when we've spoken before that you have some fairly strong views about the way operators or healthcare providers should look at the cost basis for helicopter versus ground transport, for example. I know, you know, in your home country in Switzerland, there's a lot of up and down and very little flat. So that obviously brings in that dimension as well. Could you share some of your thoughts about the way healthcare providers think about the costing?
Yes, I think one thing is, if you look on ground transportation, and if you look on the price of ground transportation, that in some cases the helicopter can even be cheaper, especially in Switzerland, because instead of driving around for 1.5 hours, you can do a helicopter flight of 10 minutes and maybe a little bit more, but it will be cheaper and much more convenient for the patient also. And the other thing, what I think, if we have more these flights from one hospital to the other, and compared with what we have a lot, skiing accidents where you have a broken shoulder, then we should look that we do not use always the same tool to do the work, only because it's a nail at the end. We use the hammer or something like this, because if you have a broken shoulder somewhere on the ski slope, then you're happy when a helicopter comes and brings you down. I know it. I didn't make it with a helicopter, so it was special experience, to say the least. And you don't need a fully equipped helicopter with all the gimmicks inside you can think about. You are happy if somebody comes with a squirrel, with a stretcher, and you are fast in the hospital because it's only a 5 or 10 minute flight. And that's a difference to if you look, for example, in Germany, where they have much longer flights from one hospital to the other, where they need a lot of equipment in the helicopter to do this.
I think, I don't know about the rest of you, but I had a little technical hitch there in hearing the last part of what you just said, Martin. But I think it brings us actually a little bit, from what I understood, a little bit to another question about how do we define what the right aircraft, the right equipment in that aircraft? What is the right fit? Is there such a thing as the right helicopter for the job? Does such a thing exist? Thibault, what do you have to say?
Interesting question, obviously. As an operator, I would like to reply yes, especially because as we are managing a large fleet, we are always trying to streamline our fleet, because the more diverse your fleet is, the more nightmares you have at night, and the more sweating you are. So it's actually quite it's actually quite a target for us always to convince our customers that there is one type of helicopters that is fit for purpose. However, I must admit that it's a struggle, and that we see from our customers, especially in our way of working. Our customers will be hospitals and doctors. We always see a willingness, to differentiate and to have additional features on the aircraft, additional capabilities, specificities. There is a desire for that, and we as operators, we are always pushing back against that in order to streamline as much as possible our fleet. Otherwise, indeed, if each helicopter would be specific to each hospital we are working for, you can guess that our life would be very difficult.
Very difficult indeed. Matthias, your thoughts. We spoke briefly about the idea of, we were talking about the H140 and the inception of that aircraft. And you were telling me you were excited about it because it was the first time it was an operator-led example.
Yeah, definitely. But maybe one sentence before coming back to that one. I'm especially from our international projects. I'm very convinced that the questions what the ideal helicopter would be for a certain service or a region thinking about establishing HAMs. I'm pretty convinced, meanwhile, that the question normally comes too early. Because I think you really have to know the conditions you are flying in and what the healthcare system is really wanting from you as a service, what the mission profile will be, what crew composition you will end up, and so on. There were a bunch of questions you should have thorough thinking about before you end up then choosing a size or type of helicopter in the end. So even that only from the perspective of the medicine and the use case, yeah. And To be honest, coming back to the 140, and we have been pretty much been involved in that project. For me, it's indeedly the first time that someone came from the use case and ended up with an helicopter. And especially when, what I said before, when we talk about that maybe we don't see the helicopter only as a means of transport, but also as a place where we can treat people because we want to go away from scene much earlier, then this is really a game changer.
Sure.
But saying that again, if you really follow a strategy that you want to come close to a 24/7 availability, even in maybe bad weather conditions, and on the same time say, hey, I want to go the way and do even invasive interventions in flight, I'm pretty sure then you would end up in a 4-person crew, what is not the standard, at least in Central Europe at the moment. Yeah.
Sure. Now, I mean, one of the things when we think about the platform that's applied for this sort of mission, you know, here in Europe, we're fairly locked in on because of regulatory positions, the idea of it's twin or nothing. You know, I often think, you know, Martin Stucki, wouldn't it be great if someone, I don't know, designed a helicopter that had the sort of volume of an H135, but was a single engine aircraft? Wouldn't that be great, Martin?
Basically, that's exactly what we did with the SH09, which is now the AW09. I think it's two things. One is to have the space of, for example, 135, and that's something we had, and the helicopter still has it. And the other thing is that it's a little bit the Swiss perspective, but Austria has the same thing. Relatively high mountains, you always need also good performance, because good performance is I think it's the major safety factor when you fly in the mountains. It comes before flying with 2 engines, etc. The second engine does not help if the performance of the overall helicopter is poor. And yes, I think it would be great, but on the other hand, it would not be a game changer for Europe, because we have other regulations. But if you look to US, there a lot of the HEMS work is done with single engine helicopters. So I think
Sure.
it's,
But
I really think it would be an issue, or is an issue for the AW09.
Yeah, I mean, do we think though that it's perhaps incumbent upon organizations, perhaps the obvious answer is someone like EHA, to work with the EASA to perhaps modify their thinking as the technology is improved in engine performance, engine reliability, system performance and reliability, that those regulations developed some decades ago, even I had hair then, that they're not necessarily valid for today's operational environment and the equipment that's available?
I think it would be important that we do this, but as I said already several times in the last months, also in the European Helicopter Association, I think overall as an industry we are, from my perspective, extremely weak when it comes that we start to influence the regulator. Because actually, to be honest, the EASA is going in the other direction. They are doing everything that innovation does not take place. It becomes more complicated. It's unbelievable time consuming. If you look on human external cargo, they make the regulations so that they are absolutely crazy. We see the same for rescue hoists. There are several projects since years. They are not able to bring it through certification. It's not only the EASA faults, but it's also regulations that are done in a way and implemented in a way that innovation becomes very hard. And I think we have, as an industry, we need to become much better to change or to influence changes on the regulation.
So do you think it would be fair to say that, and I'm not just picking on EASA, it's, the FAA are not exactly a fast-moving organization either. just ask Robinson how long it took to get the symmetrical horizontal stab certified. But I guess it comes back to that question of it's very difficult to design develop a system to solve a problem like healthcare transport if some of the options are taken out by artificial means, whether that's regulation or other controls. Thibault, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, interesting question. I have also my fair share of examples where common sense was forgotten in terms of regulations imposed to us, and not always also in the, I would say, in the interest of safety. So, indeed, it's a matter of coordinating as operator with the complexity that Europe is Europe, and we have a number of member countries, and then the above authority, and we do not have direct contact with the EASA. We actually, each of us, we interact with our direct authority, direct civil aviation, and the contact with EASA is a complex one to have. EHA is probably a good instance, and EHA actually probably should be a lot more powerful. I agree with you, Martin, in terms of influencing and trying to drive a common position. But today, we are probably too much suffering from the fact that there are a number of different civil aviations across Europe, and it's preventing us from having a common approach to EASA.
And I suppose it actually expands, and it's not to go across the pond to the next panel, but it expands to on the wider stage, right up to the ICAO level in how regulations are developed and how they're applied as they come down through bodies like EASA and then the national civil aviation authorities, or DGCAs, as appropriate. But let's circle back and think about what it is that's being done. And I guess the question I want to put to three is what the industry is doing in the HEMS sector, is it sustainable financially in terms of personnel? Matthias?
Well, may I quickly add one sentence to your discussion before? And of course, I'm not the expert to talk about whether you better fly with one or two engines. Yeah, that's definitely not my world. But only let me still give one more aspect in that discussion. We do not only have the world of regulations, we do also have the world of tenders. Yeah, and even if we discuss something on a very high level on pros or cons of any kind of equipment, we still have the situations that somebody will put out a tender and require something. Yeah, and sometimes it's not so much about the expertise, but more about the story you can tell. And at least speaking for Germany, even if your regulations would be different, I would assume that the politicians and the stakeholders in the ministries would always understand, well, two engine is somehow better than one because one could be damaged, buff, and end of story. So it could easily happen that they will, even if legal requirements are different, they still would formulate requirements in their tenders, as they do for also some medical equipment and stuff like that, where you can discuss whether that is really necessary or not. Yeah. But to your coming back to your real question you had before now, I think as an industry, we often try to benchmark with the cost of other transport systems, mainly with ground-based ambulance services. Yeah, I think we should learn more to argue and to find the benchmark to the healthcare system itself and the costs of hospital standby. Because what we believe, if you as a healthcare stakeholder say, I want to have my patients in a certain time interval in this or that special treatment, typical example, stroke, 3 hours, definite care. Yeah, then you can either have this amount of hospitals and ground ambulance transport, or you can have that amount of hospitals and airborne transport. Yeah, and if you do that calculation, yeah, you will be able to save a lot of money by reducing the amount you invest into hospital standby costs, invest that in your logistic, basically in airborne means of transport. And so we think we all should much more make up this calculation instead of saying, hey, an ambulance ride, it costs that, and a flight costs that.
Great. Martin, your thoughts?
I agree in this aspect of how do you argument for a helicopter, and I fully agree if you can close a hospital and instead using more helicopter transports, then it's a saving and then it's sustainable to use helicopters for this. What I think as a danger for the future is that we sometimes use quite large equipment. If you look over whole Europe for HIMSS, and if you look on the other side, how much tense the financial situation is of nearly all countries, actually, and I see we will have to save a lot of money in the future if we do not want to get in much more debts in these countries. Then I think we should look that we do the job with the right things. And if I see that, for example, Greece with some EU money starts to do HEMS with 2139, then I really have some questions, because that's very heavy. It's not in every case the best helicopter to do this job, because you clean up the accident place when you land. You have some danger of additional damage. Really there, I think we are not completely sustainable. It has to do also with tenders. It has to do that politicians sometimes these very small know-how write crazy things in these tenders because they heard it or they just take it over from another tender. But I think also in this aspect, we should be careful to remain sustainable.
Sure. And Thibault, any thoughts on that particular question? Just before I go to the first audience question, but Thibault, if you could just give us your thoughts on that sustainability question.
Oh, I can only agree with everything that has been said. And indeed, it's interesting to see how bad decisions can be made by, for example, governments who have little knowledge.
Just had a technical issue. I cannot hear Thibault. Hopefully you can.
Can you hear me? Yes, it seems so. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, can you?
I was saying governments who have a bad knowledge of helicopter operations. We have seen also, and I can share that in France, some government office developing a very good knowledge of helicopter operations and challenging contracts and decisions, but even much to the point where it led to war on prices and therefore bad decisions with very much reducing prices, questioning sustainability that could lead to unsustainability. So it has to be a good balance. And here, obviously, the education of governments is a key element that is driving, I would say, as a co-CEO of SAF and doing 80% of our activities toward governments, it's what keeps us awake at night, is how to grow the education in the public procurement sector, clearly.
Sure. That actually links rather well to the first question we have from the audience. And the question, I don't know who it's from, but the questioner says, regarding the common approach to influence regulations, how do you think the OEMs can support operators? I'm going to go to you first on that one, Martin.
I think it's two things. One thing is that the operators have to speak with the OEMs and go with the OEMs for EASA. But I think if I look on the European Helicopter Association, it becomes important that the operators also do influence EASA at their own. And we already heard it, there is always the problem with the national authorities in between. And I think we have a kind of, it's a filter, or even worse, that we do not have direct contact. So I think it must be European Helicopter Association. But here I just think it's not only the OEMs, because sometimes the interests are also not the same in every aspect. I really think the operators need, and we now will have an operators group in European Helicopter Association. I still hope it will become successful exactly to address these topics.
Sure. And Matthias, can I go to you on that audience question?
Well, not easy to answer from my perspective, but I would perfectly agree with what Martin said. Yeah, and maybe besides the EHA, also the EHAC is one forum where we can collect wishes and thoughts and direct it to the authorities. But as said before, I think it won't be so easy to find a common sense between the operators in that industry. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Thibault, do you have anything to add to the other two?
Maybe the fact that, as designers of their aircraft, the OEMs can be, proposing some solutions that would go towards simplicity. Especially my reading of the fact is that major OEMs, they have a major credibility towards civil aviation and towards the EASA. So if we manage to have a common speech between operators and OEMs towards simplicity, towards common sense, including in the design of solutions and aircrafts, probably that would help.
Just one final point I wanted to make on that sustainability question. It's more on the personnel side. There's challenges that seem to be across the industry, whether it's pilots, technicians, winch operators. There is a shortage of people. The other day I was driving into the airport on my way to a meeting, and there was a big illuminated sign, 10 meters high by 3 meters wide, with an advert, a poster for a well-known Middle Eastern airline saying, "Come and fly for us." I never imagined in my life as a young pilot that would ever happen, but here we are, and we see this draw from employers like that, pulling staff up into maybe higher paying jobs. Any thought about how the industry, especially the HEMS sector, is going to deal with that, especially against a background where, if you're a young pilot, you're going to, or want to be ambitions to be a young pilot, you're looking at an investment of 130,000 euros before you're employable. Do we have any thoughts there, Matthias?
Well, what we immediately started for all three professions, and as I say three professions, I see the pilots, of course, the paramedics, who are some of them are in the role of the hoist operator, and the doctors, that we much more went the way of starting education from the scratch. So really get the young people in, and even before they start in the original HEMS job, then lease them out to gain some experience in related fields. Yeah. So this is one part of our strategy. What really makes me worry in the situation is not so much, and we discussed it briefly before, not so much the shortage itself and the influence on salaries and all that stuff. We are very, very much convinced that in the complexity of HEMS and in the ongoing situation that you need good teams, making a good risk management, having the ability to find solution in unforeseeable situation and so on, all that you need the right personalities, that you need people with the right attitude for the job. And the less you have to choose from, the more you have to take what you get.
I'm afraid the screen for me has frozen.
Just correctly.
Yeah.
And this I see as a serious risk factor.
Yeah, for sure. Martin, any thoughts on the personnel side of the spectrum?
Yeah, I think on one side we also have here regulations that become more complicated, more demanding. It's a lot of effort to only become a CPL pilot into operation. And I think here we would have some room to improve, to make this simpler, easier again. And FAA, for example, shows that it's possible with even a better safety record. And the other thing is that we maybe need more concepts how we bring the pilots to a level where they then really can do HEMS flights. And I always see the example of Heli Austria, which is kind of a fabric for young pilots, transport pilots, which is very demanding, and they do a lot what is then the base also for a HEMS pilot. They have developed a kind of a concept how they bring the pilots to this stage from zero to this stage. But I think I do not know, at least in Switzerland, too many companies that do this so consequentially. And that means, yes, we will see some pilots getting retired and not as many pilots, young pilots, ready to follow.
And Thibault, just you have a lot of pilots on your and technicians and everybody, so your thoughts about that is there a solution to the problem without maybe government influence or something like that?
It's clear that internal training will be the key and the solution. It's quite obvious, and it will be also a factor that will influence the consolidation of the sector, probably, because in order to be able to train internally, you need to have a bit of a minimal size. And here I'm talking obviously about pilots and also engineers. But the fact that you are able to train a young pilot from basically out of school, I don't know which side the blades are turning, to an EMS pilot, for me, something that's creating a lot of loyalty to the company and creating also a culture of the mission. So this is, for me, this will be the solution. Another element that we have, that we are also influenced by, I think it's not perfectly aligned across Europe, but I would say that the social regulations towards working hours of pilots are sometimes lacking flexibility. At least that's what we see in some countries where we operate. And in my opinion, this lack of flexibility is driving lower salaries, while an improved flexibility could drive higher salaries and therefore, in my opinion, attract more younger people.
Okay.
And this is for us a key question in the coming years, is how to attract more younger people, and which means also how to improve our flexibility.
Sure. I have another question from the audience, and it goes like this. Does the panel feel that rotorcraft regulations are still appropriate, or is the one-size-fits-all approach to regulation damaging the industry without necessarily improving safety? Matthias?
think. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, Martin, go. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Martin. I'm just thinking about the question. If you already have something to comment, go, please.
Yes, I think so. If you look on CAT regulation, then I really think we have a problem that we have a lot influence on rotorcraft regulation coming from from the large airlines. And that's hurting a lot. There is a very simple example. At one point, they also changed the word aircraft to airplane to aircraft for the emergency medical emergency set. And then in Switzerland, we did this. The FOCA came and said, yeah, now you need for CAT flights the complete stuff they also have on the airliners, which means you need a berth set to give air, everything, a lot of things which make sense on an airliner, because normally you find a doctor on a large airplane, but it makes no sense on a helicopter. And it's only one example. We have many of these examples. Also, if you look on dangerous goods, we waste a lot of space in our handbooks for dangerous goods, but normally it's only a very, very small percentage of our problems during the flight. And also this is influenced by airliners. And yes, I think it would make sense we do not need a special regulation maybe, but we need better regulations that fit to rotorcrafts, instead of only changing the airplane regulation a little bit, that it just the rotorcrafts can live with it.
Sure. Matthias, have you thought?
I thought and listened, and I would say yes. What Martin said is definitely true. Yeah, and that not from the point of view of a really expert in that subject of aviation regulations, but I see us suffer from a lot of little things, which are just not fit to what we do. Yeah, and there should be a lot of quick wins to reduce costs, to make operation easier, without any idea that would increase any risk. Yeah.
And Thibault, the final word.
It's a big question. Personally, I must say that I'm quite in favor of alignment of regulations, because it favorizes exchange of ideas, and it favorizes also exchanges of best practices among operators, including between countries. It also facilitates cross-country operations, whereas as a German operator, you can work in Italy where you feel safe because you don't have to do a whole study of the regulation, and you feel that there is an alignment of regulations between countries. So I would say personally, still there is an interest to have a one-size-fits-all in the sense that there should be alignment in Europe. We know as Europeans that diversity of countries is, in a sense, it's our heritage, but it's also a major disadvantage versus, for example, US operators who have this very strong, unique market with no specificity, if you see what I mean.
Sure.
So one size fits all, I like it, but it has to be very, very smart.
Yeah. So we've established, because I think we do need to pass over to our colleagues on the left side of the pond. So to sum up then, we've established that you can't take off until the weight of the paperwork equals or exceeds the weight of the aircraft. That helicopters are good and they're way better than ground ambulances. And the industry has a lot of challenges still to deal with. So Matthias, Ruppert, Martin, Stucki, Thibault, Nicodeme, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time this afternoon. And I will hand back now to Emmanuel and our colleagues on the other side of the pond.
Thanks, Gideon. Thank you very much. And a big thank you to all our panelists for sharing their valuable insights into the European EMS market. And now let's cross the Atlantic and to explore the perspectives from North America. I'm delighted to introduce John Byus, Senior Sales Director at Aero Asset. Hey, John.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm on the west side of the U.S., so it's morning for me.
Yeah.
But,
good morning to you.
A great session from our European colleagues. This topic for me is near and dear to my heart. I spent most of my operational career in EMS, so it's very fulfilling for me to be able to talk about this and bring in some of our American colleagues that are operating EMS aircraft in the U.S. So I'll make some introductions. First off, and this is in alphabetical order, Charlie Blathras from Boston MedFlight. Boston MedFlight is a well-established operator operating out of the Boston area, the New England area, both air and ground transports. Very long legacy and history, doing 6,000 transports every year, and both ground, air, fixed wing transports. Next is Kenny Morrow from Metro Aviation down in Shreveport, Louisiana. Metro is a Part 135 operator operating 180 aircraft, primarily on behalf of hospital systems. And they operate about 80,000 hours per year in their fleet. They also have a substantial completions business, which does about 40 completions per year between their three different locations, one in Shreveport, one in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania, and then one in Lafayette, Louisiana. And to date, they've done about 600 completions. Next up is Travis Patterson, the CEO of Halo Flight. Halo Flight is a not-for-profit operation down in Corpus Christi, operating a fleet of 407s, servicing their area. Travis has a pretty long history in military aviation, with his last stint, or one of his last stints, flying the president. So thank you for your service, Travis.
Thank you.
And our last panelist is Greg Winkle. He is the regional maintenance manager of Stat MedEvac. Stat MedEvac is a operation in Western Pennsylvania, flying 20 plus aircraft and servicing that area for air medical, ground transport needs, both fixed wing and rotorcraft. So thank you all for joining us, everybody. We'll kind of jump into some of these questions, and I'll start off with the person that I asked the question of first, and then we can all kind of chat about it, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
So Charlie's topic that he wanted to talk about is about finding a balance between increasing costs for high-end operations and the continuing decrease in reimbursement that supports them. We all face that in the US because most of our transports are insurance funded or by Medicare, and reimbursement is a big challenge. So Charlie, I'll let you kind of jump off with that, and then we can start the discussion.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. So I've been with the program for 30 years, and reimbursement, I think we can all agree, has always been a healthy challenge in the industry. Since COVID, there's an increased number of under and uninsured patient in the population industry. And we found recently that a lot of the commercial operators are quick to deny claims based on medical necessity, which could be a debatable issue when you get down to that nitty gritty. I think over time, it just seems like the gap between the cost of everything going up and reimbursement, even trying to keep pace with that, is widening. And so, we are a high-end program. We operate a heavy IFR in a heavy IFR environment. We spend a tremendous amount of dollars on the training of our clinical staff. There's virtually no clinical scenario we won't manage without any additional help. And I worry that as this trend continues, will we have to start thinking about downsizing, cutting, and what we're able to provide our community. To my knowledge, there are very few programs in North America, or in the States at least, that are considered true public services, meaning they get public funds, of which we get none. So where do we go from here? That's sort of my big question. I don't know if I have all the answers, but that's sort of the dilemma we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I would like to kind of shift that to Travis, because Travis, his organization, faces the same reimbursement challenges. They're a high quality program, but HeliFlight flies single engine aircraft. Boston MedFlight flies twin engine aircraft. So Travis, if you could give your viewpoint on that.
Sure. Yeah. So we have some similar challenges with, about 40% of the 1,300 or so patients we fly every year are uninsured. So it's reimbursement, obviously, just like everybody else, is a challenge. So, we do have to look for efficiencies everywhere we can, standardizing our fleet. We're a smaller operator, so 5 aircraft, 3 bases, but basically looking for efficiencies anywhere we can. We don't get direct funding from the state, but we do get funding from counties that we support, but it is minimal. It's $10,000 here, $15,000 there, which, of the 27 counties that we operate in, at the end of the day, it's 36 minutes worth of operating cost, the funding that we get from them. So I think in the future, especially, I'll just speak for the area that we serve, very, very rural, limited to no healthcare in some small ranching communities in South Texas. There's just nothing there. Sometimes the only medical, service they have is a volunteer fire department with 2 people in a pickup truck that serves an entire county. So I think some state funding is going to have to help us eventually. Right now, between insurance companies and fundraising for the nonprofit status that we're able to support, but eventually costs get more expensive, helicopters get more expensive, the equipment, everything just trends up. We do similar things as far as training. We're working towards getting all of our pilots IFR, all of our medical crew very well trained. A little bit easier when you only have 52 total employees, but the cost is still the cost. So I hope that helps, John. I mean, I think eventually we are going to have to, this is a service that we provide the community, and the state of Texas is eventually going to have to start providing some funding for it.
Yeah, understand. Thanks, Travis. Hey, Kenny, I'd like to throw this at you. So Metro doesn't bill directly to patients like Charlie's and Travis's program does, but your customers, your hospitals do. And I know that your company has made some great efforts to try and help the programs that you fly for to maintain their revenue and improve their revenue from patient billing. So kind of interested that you could describe what you've done for your customers.
Yeah, the majority of our customers are hospitals. We do have a handful of ambulance companies that we operate for, but just like Travis and Charlie said, that's the real challenge in our industry, is that costs are increasing exponentially while reimbursement or revenue is flat at best. And so, I tell my kids all the time, I'm in an unsustainable business model. Like we just can't continue to do this. And so that's, Metro Aviation invests a lot in gently used aircraft to try to keep our costs under control. But we're also spending a lot of time looking at Martin Stucki's AW09 and the Robinson R88 that's coming out. And I know Charlie Blathras and his group have looked at Beta Technologies and electric aircraft options, which are a little further down the road. So doing everything we can to control costs. But like you said, John, we have a field team, sort of consultants that work for Metro Aviation that advise all of our customers on how to improve or at least safeguard their reimbursement. I think it's clear to everyone that government reimbursement is not going to go up, and if it does, it's going to be very, very minuscule. Commercial payers are pushing back every chance that they get. I do think that there's opportunity right now through the No Surprises Act and the independent dispute resolution process to collect some real money from commercial payers that you're out of network with, if you're willing to go down that path and take those extra steps, which the data is showing that the bigger operators that are operating on their own, the for-profits, are being really, really successful with that. I don't know how long that's going to last. I think that at some point that's going to tighten up or dry up. But the healthcare ecosystem is very, very delicate in the United States, and the challenges are huge. So we've got a customer that's going to get into the H160, a handful of customers that are investing in the H145, just like Charlie and his group have, and they're awesome, incredible helicopters. We're going to be the launch customer on the H140 in North America. But if I had to guess, there's going to continue to be a migration towards single engine helicopters, more affordable aircraft in the United States over the next several years, which is a shame, because our patients are getting bigger and the amount of equipment that our customers want to carry is getting larger and heavier. So it's quite the quandary.
Thanks, Kenny. Good points there. I'm going to move over to Greg and his topic. So Greg is on the maintenance side of Stat MedEvac, and like everybody around the world are facing hiring challenges. I know 25 years ago when I was a director of maintenance, it was hard finding good technicians, and I'm sure it's not improved at all. So Stat has been working with a skill bridge program, which I think some of our other operators here have as well. So Greg, I'd like for you to kind of talk about what you're doing in hiring, and I'm assuming this will apply to both pilots and technicians.
So yeah, we do the skill bridge program with partnering with the military for mechanics and pilots. I can speak more towards the mechanic side of things, but we bring them on for the last 3 months of their enlistments, and they work side by side with the mechanics in our hangar. For those 3 months, they get some civil aviation experience, exposure to how we do the paperwork, the regulations, and really the on-the-job experience is amazing for them. And at the completion of that 3 months, we send them for their airframe and power plant license. We pay all the fees, and hopefully they successfully pass. We give them one attempt. We foot the bill, and then if we have a spot in our hangar for them to work and they're a good fit, we'll hire them and will be a full-time employee with us. If not, oftentimes we don't have spots. We have very low turnover on our maintenance side of the house. We'll give them a nice letter of recommendation and we'll send them out into the industry and they can go work elsewhere. But it has proven to be a good program for us. We've had some good candidates come through it and some really good maintenance technicians.
What are you seeing the challenges of these folks transitioning from military to civilian? What are the, if I were to give you the two top issues or problems of that transition?
Probably dealing with the paperwork on the civil side is a bit of a change for them. And then what topic B? I guess just the working conditions in the hangar versus what they're used to or accustomed to. A different style mechanic maybe on the civil side than they're dealing with in the military. So just
okay. That's good. Well, that's interesting. Kenny, I know Metro is using the skill bridge. I've seen lots of Facebook posts of successful transitions. Can you give us your feedback?
Yeah, we found some really great employees through the skill bridge program, and like Greg said, the challenge of paperwork is steep, but we found it to be well worth it. I mean, just from pilots and mechanics, some really quality candidates. It's a little tricky because from what I understand, the max amount of time that they're going to have remaining is 6 months, I think. So you may get somebody for 5 months, or may get somebody for 1 month, and then that may not be where they want to continue their career or the rest of their lives. So we try to find other alternatives for them to be, and maybe there's opportunity for those of us on this call and others in the air medical industry to cooperate on that a little bit. And if I've got somebody who we've brought through the program and is a really good option, but they want to live in Travis or Charlie or Greg's area, and I don't have anything to offer them, then we could do a sort of a gentle handoff and work cooperatively like that. I think that would produce some good fruits.
That's nice. Travis or Charlie, are you working with the Skill Bridge program at all?
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, we're not working specifically with Skill Bridge, but we do have a couple of military bases in the area, and on the maintenance side, particularly maintenance schools, and we're trying to do some internship type Skill Bridge type activity with them. In fact, I'm hosting a group with our director of maintenance next week from one of the schools here. So we're trying to do some of that.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't started yet either, but we're looking at it. I mean, there is a military base here as well. There's also a junior college that does A&P training. So we have some interns from there every now and then for mechanics. Unfortunately, the military base here is all fixed wing, so we're struggling to find helicopter pilots.
Okay. Travis, I'll jump to your topic that you had provided to me. Employee recruitment, retention, sign-on bonuses for both pilots and mechanics. Can you kind of explain what you've been doing to recruit and retain your aviation personnel?
Yeah, so we've been pretty fortunate with medical staff. We haven't had to hire anybody. We had to hire one paramedic last year. Other than that, we haven't had to hire anybody in 3 years. So I think we're pretty content on that. The biggest challenge we're finding is pilots. And there's a few reasons for that. One is geographic location. We're in Corpus Christi. I don't know if you've ever been to South Texas, but not a lot of people want to come here. It's I like it, but not everybody else does. So it being a smaller nonprofit, our ability to offer the $50,000-$60,000 sign-on bonuses just doesn't exist. So what we've done in the last year is just, we have an employee bonus structure that was blanketed across the entire company. So it didn't matter what, you had C-suite, management, and employee, and they all got X percentage regardless of what their role was. So we just changed it last year to tailor it to mechanics, pilots, medical staff, admin staff, and make it a 3-year running recurring incentive bonus. So we hire a pilot. At the end of his first year, he gets X. At the end of his 24 months, he gets another bonus. At the end of 36 months, he gets the final. So at the end of the day, it works out to be similar to what a larger operator is offering for a sign-on bonus that we just can't afford to write that big of a check right out the gate. But we can space it over 3 years. And, again, we have 14 pilots on staff. We actually have 12. We're looking for 2 more. We have 14 pilots on staff, and we're fully staffed. And that's helped us get some more applications in the door in the last week. Because truthfully, I'm sensitive to 2 things. One, I don't want to offer big sign-on bonuses because, the guys that we have that have been here for a long time, it can be a little insulting to some of them, and rightly so. And then the other thing is, it incentivizes pilot, bonus hopping. We do have a policy. We don't send guys to Bell Training Academy anymore. We have our own internal program. So we train all of our 407 guys in-house, which has been a great cost savings for us. So we used to say, if we're going to train you, we keep you for a year. We had a few folks leave within a year, and our legal advice was don't even bother trying to get the money back because you're not gonna. It costs you more in legal. So, your hands are kind of tied. So we had to find a way to incentivize people to stay. And, hopefully if I get somebody to take that deal and I only keep them for 3 years, that's agreeable to me. I can take that as opposed to 8 months or 10 months or something. So that's kind of what we did. And so far it seems to be helping at least get a lot more interest in the door because we've been trying to hire for a little while. And, it's a good time to be a pilot. There's a lot of good opportunities out there.
Charlie, how's your group doing with pilot and mechanic retention?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we've done okay. We've struggled a little bit on the maintenance side because we've seen that as our Achilles heel. We've been pretty lucky. I'll say lucky on the pilot side. We don't have a lot of turnover there. We've got 7 brand new H145 D3s here. People want to come and fly here. We have a Coast Guard base that's close by. So in the last decade or so, I would ballpark that we've had 5 hires out of there from retired Coast Guard pilots. So we're getting sort of the cream of the crop. They've got the best training program there. We send all our people to simulator training. And in fact, we've invested in the Loft 145 virtual simulator to have here. And we figure in the next 5 years, it'll have paid for itself. So we're trying to look at those efficiencies as well. But we haven't struggled on the pilot side in a long time. We're sort of focusing on the maintenance side. Most of the potential candidates coming in too don't have a lot of experience. So that's been a challenge.
Understand. Greg, you mentioned that you have very low turnover in your shop. How many maintenance personnel are on staff at STAT?
We have roughly 34 technicians in our organization. And I think in the past, let's say 10 years, we've had 2 leave for other opportunities. A handful of others have retired. And outside of that, that's been our turnover. It's very, very low.
What do you attribute your low turnover to?
Me?
Hey, conditions? Or you chained them to the helicopter?
Yeah, right. Can't leave. No, I think it's we have a good management structure here. I believe all the technicians enjoy the management. We have a great working relationship. We value their opinions. We understand that the job can be taxing, and we respect that. And we really make sure that none of the technicians feel like they're out there by themselves. We have 18 base sites spread all over Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, and down in the Maryland. And you're a technician. You got an engine that won't start in a rooftop. You don't ever want to feel like you're there by yourself. So our on-call managements to really help support that is really good. So I think that all plays into it. That it's a team effort versus an individual mechanic trying to fix something by himself.
Okay, thanks. Since we're on the topic of personnel, technology is being embedded more and more everywhere you go, at the bases, at the headquarters, flight tracking, use of hums on aircraft. Everything is working in a technology direction. But I'll use myself as a good example of a dinosaur. I'm 67. I'm moderately tech savvy, but probably not. So, Greg, how do you deal with old timers like me versus 20-somethings coming in that live on their phone?
Yeah, so it's a blend of people for sure. And on our latest aircraft, when it breaks, the first thing you do is you grab the computer and you're downloading information. So for the older generations, we do a lot of FaceTiming and show me your screen. I'll click this button, click that button. To kind of get them through it. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but that's kind of how we navigate with the older generation. There's a lot of fingers on screens and like, hey, move your thumb, I can't see, type things. And then the younger generations coming in, it's still the typical mechanic going through A&P school or in that industry didn't spend a whole lot of time in computer classes in high school. They gravitated more towards the shop classes. So even the younger generation still have, while they're on their phones all the time, still limited knowledge on the IT stuff on the aircraft. So it's a real challenge. And we work closely with Airbus and our own IT departments here at Stats to sometimes troubleshoot these aircraft and get the things working correctly. So it's definitely a challenge, and I don't see it getting any easier in the future.
Okay. Kenny, what are your thoughts on that? Kenny's I think maybe has the hardest job in the world because of the two guys he works for, which is good and bad. Super dynamic guys, but they're even older than I am, and so and you've got a lot of really long-term 30+ year employees at Metro. How do you see the technology embedment processing?
Yeah, it's a tough learning curve. I mean, I have visions of your grandkids showing you how to use your iPhone there, John. So, like Greg says, there's a lot of fat fingers and small screens out there that to navigate. But I mean, the main thing is training, and that's where we're putting a lot of our focus is on the maintenance training side of things. I think that's an area of our industry that has been lacking greatly for decades. The pilots have $20 million full motion sims, and Charlie mentioned the system that they're using to train in the H-145, and they go to school once a year and they do all these things, and the mechanics we chunk them out in the field with a box of tools and tell them to figure it out. And like everybody mentioned, the first thing you do now is you pull out the laptop and plug it into the computer, plug it into the aircraft to try to figure out what's going on. So in our opinion, it's training. And that's where we're making a lot of investments and expanding that group and trying to make that our specialty and our leading edge is on the maintenance training side of things.
Charlie, any comments from you on that?
Yeah, I think we all chuckled when Greg said it was him keeping the staff there, but there's something to be said about the people that are in the leadership roles. So we're probably into our 8th year on our own certificate. We've been a vendor program for the first 30 some odd years of the program here. And we realized that the people you put in those leadership roles are the ones that are going to make a difference. And they will make or break this process. So we were very, very methodical and diligent about who we put in those leadership roles, and we weren't going to pull the trigger until we did that. And so they've created an environment that's open door, that's supportive, you know, all the reasons why Greg will tell you his people stay with him. And that's filtered down to the staff level. So on the maintenance side, for instance, we've got a guy that used to work at MBB. So he's been in the industry a long time. He's got a huge knowledge base and experience to offer the younger guys. And so he supports them in their learning, and they support his need for technology education. So it sort of works both ways. But I think it's the culture you create. And I think part of the other thing that's important is I think the mission. People gravitate towards our actual mission, and that's why they want to stay in programs like ours. So it's the relationships you build. I've known Kenny now for the last dozen years. They've completed all of our aircraft. He's a large operator. The rest of us are smaller operators. In a pinch, I know I can call Kenny and say, hey, can you help us out with X, Y, or Z? They don't operate our program, obviously. Because when we decided to move to our own certificate, there wasn't an anxiety level there about, you know, now we're going off on our own. There's no backup aircraft. There's no backup pilots. There's no backup this. And so we've tried to network out with other like-minded programs that are on their own certificate on the smaller side, like we are, to be supportive in that respect. Long-winded answer to your question, but I think it all revolves around the people and relationships.
Thank you, Charlie. We're getting down to just a couple of topics, and I purposely left these for the last, and they're the most challenging, I think, for all these operations. We touched specifically on some reimbursement earlier, but now we're going to talk about getting aircraft. And there's a couple of topics that we're going to talk about. One is comparing fair market values against loan values, and the challenges that they bring for all size operators, but particularly smaller, and the current situation that we have with tariffs. I'll give you a little bit of background. The current tariff situation is, and this applies in the context of our group, is aircraft that were built in Europe, regardless of where they come from, right now, today, are under a 15% tariff. So that affects new aircraft and used aircraft. Now, on the Bell side, that's not an issue. So you could get a 407 out of Europe and not have to pay that tariff. But Kenny and I have been working on some projects. We're feeling the pain of the tariff. So Kenny, I'll let you talk about the tariff and then maybe roll into the fair market value versus loan value challenges.
Yeah, the tariffs are a tough topic. We have paid out a lot of money this year in tariffs, but we've also seen some of our vendors start moving a portion of their capabilities to the United States, which was, I think, the whole point of implementing the tariffs. The tariffs have also helped us, Metro Aviation, become more competitive in Europe, because before the tariffs, we have a competitor in Europe that can ship their goods. We're able to ship their goods into the United States with zero tariff. But when I try to ship my goods into Europe, they get hit with a tariff or some equivalent thereof. So it's a mixed bag. I mean, from my understanding is that there is a verbal agreement between the United States and Europe to have 0 for 0 tariffs. We're just waiting on it to be implemented, and it's possible that it may be retroactive to September 1st. So maybe we're able to apply for refunds on some of the monies that we've put out since September 1st. But it is very challenging when you assess an aircraft, you look at an aircraft, you decide I want to buy it, and you really don't know at the moment whether or not there was a 20% and then a 10% and now a 15% tariff on that aircraft, and the possibility that tariff may completely go away. But at the end of the day, you need the aircraft. You need the aircraft. It's still going to be much less expensive than purchasing a brand new aircraft from the OEM, which, by the way, may not be available for the next 12 to 24 to 30 months. So it's the price, it's the availability that goes along with that. And to your topic of the appraised value of the aircraft, you know, we own enough aircraft and we've got enough equity that, you know, if we end up spending $5 million on a helicopter that only appraises for $3 million, we're okay banking wise. But I know that there's a lot of entities that really struggle with that, and it's a double-edged sword, because you don't want Heli Values or somebody else appraising the aircraft at $5 million, because then that affects your ability to purchase it. But then you also need it to appraise high enough to be able to borrow money against it. So it's a little bit of a weird scenario that we've danced through, and Aero Assets has been a huge help with all that. But yeah, we're living in the used aircraft market, and trying to navigate those topics is pretty tough.
Travis, you've purchased a few new aircraft from Bell recently. Obviously, you're not facing these tariff challenges, but are you facing any appraisal versus loan challenges?
We have not, and we've been fortunate. So in the 2 years I've been here, we've purchased 2 GXIs. The time has been a challenge, you know, between delivery and completion. It's 16 months for each one. We still haven't gotten our last one that I purchased at the end of 2024. So we've been fortunate, though. You know, part of the nonprofit advantage is we have some supporters who have financed these helicopters at very, very low interest rates for us. So that's been a huge advantage for us. So we've been fortunate in that regard. It's just the time, you know, we're waiting on our last one to get us to 6, and then we'll be fully staffed with helicopters.
Yeah, Charlie, as you mentioned, you're flying several new D3s. I assume that you had those moved through before the tariffs hit. Is that accurate? You're on mute, Charlie.
Muted. Sorry, I'm not controlling my mute. So that's a negative, John. We're in the middle of a 5-year purchase plan here. So I think we've received 3 of the first 5, which were not affected by the tariffs, but the last 2 will be. And so it is a challenge. And we're hopeful, to Kenny's point, that some of this will turn back and become somewhat retroactive. But we're exploring other opportunities. I think that we've had a good working relationship with Airbus, and this is obviously beyond their control. But I mean, we just can't make the budget work at this rate. So we have to look at different opportunities that are out there. And again, to coin Kenny, the gently used market is an area we're starting to look at a little bit.
Interesting. Oh, thank you.
Actually, John, I don't know if we did just sell 2 in the last year, and we sold a 429 that actually appraised for more than I thought it would, and then our legacy 407, I think we got a good appraisal and a good sales price on it.
Okay. Did both of those aircraft, did they end up in the U.S. or did they go abroad?
They both end up in the U.S. Yeah, one went to North Carolina, and I don't know where the other one went, but they both stayed in the States.
Okay. Interesting. We at Aero Asset, we work, you know, an international market. The helicopter market is international, and the aircraft that we've been trying to help Kenny procure have all been out of the United States. Kenya, Brazil, which didn't make it here, unfortunately. You know, some really odd places. And so it's truly an international market, and getting this tariff back to 0 for aerospace products is really important for everybody. So
I think there's an audience question. How are tariffs affecting operators contracts and or charges. And I'll just start that, but it's Metro Aviation signs 5-year agreements with our customers. So we have not yet had the ability to pass those charges through to our customers. If it's an aircraft we're purchasing and reselling, then we factor that in, and unfortunately our customer ends up taking that hit. But they're, for parts, especially the increased cost of maintaining aircraft, we've taken that on the chin so far.
Yeah, I that's a good point, and I'm glad the audience brought that question up. Even though we're mostly focused on helicopters here, I think almost everybody on this panel also operates the fixed wing and PC-12s in particular. And right now there's a 30% tariff on the parts and the aircraft on the Pilatus side. And that's a huge hit for operating costs if you're stuck in a contract to operate at X number of dollars when it's costing you Y now. Well, thank you all very much for your participation. Charlie, Kenny, Travis, Greg, we really appreciate your input and the time you spent on this. Look forward to seeing you in the future. And we'll transition this over to William now.
Well, yeah, I'll give you a quick, just a quick look at the key metrics for the first half of 2025. Sadly, it's not the most rosy of situations, but overall twin engine retail sales volume is at a 5-year low. Supply is pretty flat year on year. So this has pushed our absorption rate. And again, the absorption rate is how long it takes to consume or to sell the current available number of aircraft. So the current absorption rate's at 22 at current trade, 22 months at current trade levels. That's up about 40%. Light twin sales continue to decline, down about 37% year on year, but supplies remain steady. Medium twins, both supply and sales are also at a 5-year low, but pricing is up about 10% compared to the same time last year. Heavy twins, again, same as we're reporting across the board, 5-year low, with supply up about 40%, but pricing is the highest we've actually seen it since in the last 5 years. So those transactions that are occurring are getting a good retail value. Deal pipeline, that's kind of what we track to follow transactions at various stages of the deal progress. It's about down 40%. We're looking at 22 transactions currently going on worldwide. Yeah, as I said, a very different dynamic in the pre-owned twin engine market right now, but I think it's probably a good idea. We can go to our next slide and show you how the different models are trending. This is our liquidity lineup. It ranks the different models of helicopters based on absorption rate, sales, and active fleet size. So the 145 remains the most liquid market. It's got one of the lowest absorption rates we've seen. It's 7 months, and that's actually down 2 months from where we were last year at this time. The 429 has also had a big improvement. It's at 14 months. That's also dropped down 2 months compared to this time last year. 109s, S's and SPs are remaining strong contenders. And we've even seen S76 C+ and C++. It's been a while since we've seen the S76 in the top 5 of the lineup, but there's definitely some active buyers out there. 135s across all variants. It's the first time, I think, since we've produced this report, this lineup, that we've seen the 135s drop out of the top 5. But that's, again, overall across all variants. T2+, P2+, would actually be in second place on this lineup if we're just looking at that variant with a 7-month absorption rate. So there are certain models that are remaining very sought after, and they come on the market. They're moving pretty quickly. Bottom of the list, 225s and 155s. just not a lot of demand right now, and not a lot of activity in the market. And I haven't seen a lot of 155s come in the market. So yeah, just kind of a quiet down at the bottom. But you know, the first half of 2025 shows this market that's got a lot of challenges but also a lot of opportunities. You know, if you're in the fortunate position to be ready to move a 145, any variant, D2, D3, even C2s, it's a good time. But if you're looking at 412s, as we said, 155s and 225s, it's going to require a real aggressive look on pricing in the market to get buyers interested. So that's a quick look at the market. You can always download our Heli Market Trends to see it and sign up so you can get it every time they come out. And also, if you ever want to talk markets, give us a call. All right.
Call William. We're not going to be so crude as to put your phone number on screen, but thank you very much, William. And if you want to download the report, go to aeroasset.com/report, aeroasset.com/report. It's free. Thank you very much to all our moderators and panelists, and to all of you joining live and via replay. The next Heli Market Trends Live will take place October 30th. We look forward to welcoming you then. Thank you.